Line 4 is the subway line Torontonians love to hate. It was built before the first subways era, and its ridership hasn't stood up to that of its larger, longer siblings. Pre-COVID, Line 1 moved 800,000 people per day. Line 2 moved around 500,000. Meanwhile, Line 4 moved just around 50,000 riders per day. Pitiful! But there's something about transit modes that makes people forget to check the basic numbers. Line 2 gets an average of 1.6 times more riders per station every day than Line 4. And that's a lot, but it's not an order of magnitude difference. It's the type of thing that could definitely be fixed. You see, plucky Line 4 has a lot of things working against it, but an incredible amount of potential for the future. So let's talk about its challenges and how we can make it so much better. Hey there, my name is Reece, and I run a channel where I say, well, actually, to people repeating common transit misconceptions. The Sheppard line, old as it might feel, has only been around since 2000, and that's the first thing that sets it apart from Toronto's other subway lines, which have had decades more time to shape land use and travel patterns. And a lot of those changes have been stubbornly slow on Sheppard. One of the longest running jokes in Toronto transit is that Bessarion Station has nothing around it. It might not even exist. But that's not really true anymore. Look at this new community center and all of this density. It's only just in the last 10 years that stations like Bessarion and Leslie have started to be truly surrounded with high-density housing, and more density is planned at the other stations on the line as well. The line is also short, and that means its utility is limited. Many of the busiest stations on the Toronto subway are terminals because people often take long trips on the system. But a long trip on a short line makes little sense. People don't like transferring, and so a short line just provides less possible journeys without lots of transfers. And of course, the other big driver of Toronto subway ridership is bus connections. Toronto has one of the best local bus systems in the world, and a shorter subway line just has less bus routes to intercept. The Leslie and Bayview buses kind of suck. Not many people ride them, just 4,000 and 10,000 a day respectively, and the frequency obviously isn't all that great. And the stations that these buses connect to sort of reflect that. Meanwhile, Don Mills Station is actually quite respectable in its ridership, and what do you know, the connecting bus also has great ridership. More than you might expect for it just simply being the terminal. Line 4's frequency also kind of sucks. It was only every 5.5 minutes pre-COVID, and while that might be good by low North American standards, it's not even great by Toronto subway standards, and for better or for worse, more frequency means more riders, whether you're on a bus, a streetcar, or a train. But what's funny is that at the end of the day, Line 4 actually has decent ridership. The trains tend to be fairly busy, and given it's only around 5 kilometers long, its ridership is actually quite high. So high that the ridership is actually higher than Vancouver's Evergreen SkyTrain extension, despite having less TOD and less stations. And that's not to mention that the ridership is better than a lot of much longer subway lines in the United States. So what's the solution for this line then? Well, as they say, sometimes you need to spend money to make money, and sometimes you need to build more transit to unlock way more ridership. Line 4's busiest station, and one of the busiest on the network, is Sheppard Yonge. Why? Well, because this is a connection point to Line 1, obviously. And fortunately, another high ridership, high value connection exists just 5 kilometers to the west at Sheppard West Station, on the other side of Line 1. Better yet, when building the Sheppard line, tail tracks for storing out-of-service trains were already built to Senlac Road, and so the true length of an extension is only about 4 kilometers, with the station in the middle at Bathurst Street. This connection would make so many people's lives easier. Problems on the Yonge subway, ride over to the other side of the U and continue your commute. And cross-city journeys would also get way better. Finch to Yorkdale, York Mills to York University, and Humber College to Don Mills are just some trips that are pretty painful or just slow today that would get way better overnight. Low transit demand for these trips today is a reflection of poor transit connections. Canada's busiest highway, the 401, is the major road option for several of these trips. There are also major benefits of this extension for the operation of Line 1, one of the busiest subway lines in the Americas. Right now, most Line 1 trains are stored at the massive Wilson Yard at the west end of the U, making deploying trains to the busier Yonge side in the morning much more challenging, a problem that will only get worse as the line's new signaling demands even more trains. A Line 4 Western extension could fix this problem by bridging the two sides of Line 1 and allowing Line 1 trains entering service to take a shortcut. Plus, Wilson has room to grow and could be expanded to handle Line 4 train maintenance as well. Now, in the past, I've heard the argument that building a western extension is hard because you'll need to build a bridge across the Don River near Earl Bales Park, but this is a nothing burger. The Ontario line will need a much larger bridge to cross the southern part of the Don Valley, and I haven't heard anyone seriously suggest that such a bridge is a major impediment to building that line. We build road bridges all the time, and so building a rail bridge just shouldn't be that big of a deal. And if cost is an issue, well, build the rest of the line cut and cover. Sheppard is a wide suburban street, and there is lots of space to build a subway without going deep below the earth. And this would actually make accessing the stations much more straightforward, without needing to go down levels and levels of escalators. Of course, we should also extend the line east, but how far? Well, Victoria Park already has loads of density, and in fact the corridor all the way to Agincourt also has a lot of new and emerging density. And of course, at Agincourt, there's a GO station that will have the potential to provide subway-level passenger numbers someday in the future, and it's already seen a major facelift in the last few years. Of course, a little further to the southeast, you're at Scarborough Centre, connecting you to the Line 2 extension we're currently digging, regional and intercity buses, and the new Durham BRT to the University of Toronto Scarborough campus and Centennial College. Now, previously, the thinking has been that the Sheppard line might connect with Line 2 at Sheppard and McCowan, but it makes way more sense to go to Scarborough Centre, because it's already an established regional hub, and it has a lot of other transit services besides just the subway. Sending the line to Sheppard and McCowan would force many riders to change lines, just to go one stop on the subway to their destination at Scarborough Centre, and vice versa. So with 8 kilometers of track and 4 stations, Victoria Park, Warden North, Agincourt, and Scarborough Centre, you pick up 2 new rail connections, a BRT route, and a ton of regional buses. As with the western extension, an eastern extension could reasonably be built using cut and cover construction. And all of the actual stations could be built for 4-car trains, which is all Line 4 currently uses, similar in capacity to the Ontario line, and plenty for the long term. You could potentially even have trains run elevated for portions of the route to further reduce cost, perhaps along the 401 for example. Of course, extending Line 4 east and west also connects you to a bunch of popular north-south bus routes. The 11,000 rider a day McCowan route, Kennedy with 17,000, 16,000 on Warden, 23,000 on Victoria Park, and also over 20,000 on Bathurst. These routes all move more riders a day than the Leslie and Bayview buses. And in total, these bus routes make up nearly 100,000 daily riders connecting to the line north-south, not to mention the 3 additional rail rapid transit connections, each of which could easily provide tens of thousands of additional riders per day. And then there's something even more important. North Toronto lacks a strong east-west rapid transit corridor. The Finch and Eglinton LRT routes are both valuable projects, but their small, tram-style vehicles are limited on their capacity, and they won't be particularly fast, even with signal priority, as they have so many stops. Both of these lines also miss the northeast quadrant of Toronto anyways, where several extremely heavily used east-west bus routes operate, including the Lawrence East bus, which moves 33,000 people a day, 26,000 people on the Sheppard East bus, which would in large part be directly superseded by the subway, 22,000 on Finch East, and 25,000 on Steeles East. Many of these riders are traveling long distances across the north of the city to locations at Yonge Street and beyond, and an extended subway would massively speed up and improve their journeys. Now, if you're wondering why the Sheppard line isn't busier if there's so much demand, well, it wouldn't make sense for these riders to get on the Sheppard line today, because that would mean transferring to at least one other bus, riding a short distance to the subway line, and then being forced to transfer again at the end of it. All of this transferring eats up any speed benefits that taking the subway would have, and it would also mean that you have to get out of your seat and get onto another vehicle several times. But an extended Sheppard line would reduce the number of transfers that need to be made, and allow faster crosstown and cross-regional trips, like from Whitby to York University, Vaughan to Scarborough, or Markham to North York Centre. The final game-changing adjustment that could be made to the line is a conversion to fully automated operation. The new track and stations could all be built with this in mind, platform screen doors, modern signaling, and all. And the existing stations could be retrofitted reasonably easily, as cities like Paris and Sydney have done in the past when they automated traditional pre-existing rail lines. Automating Line 4 would allow the TTC to run shorter trains twice as often, with little additional cost, as is already done in places like Vancouver. That more frequent service would make riding Sheppard to all of its new destinations even faster, since you'd wait less at the station, and more convenient since many riders will be transferring to the subway from other lines. As ridership continues to grow, the TTC could start to reinstate longer and longer trains as is justified. So when all is said and done, this would be a game-changing project for Toronto, but it needs to be subway. A conversion to light rail has been at least entertained in the past, but it doesn't make sense for a number of reasons. For one, it would mean giving up and essentially performing an expensive and complex downgrading of the core of the line, from Don Mills to west of Yonge, including giving up the complex rail junction we've already built at Yonge and Sheppard for lower capacity light rail vehicles, which are more expensive, higher maintenance, and less accessible than standard high-floor subway trains. This would also mean lower speeds on both the east and west of the line, making it far less useful for the express cross-city and cross-regional service that Toronto's subway traditionally provides, essentially duplicating the already extensive but slower east-west local bus service that already exists on every major street. It would ultimately be replicating the problems of the Eglinton Crosstown, which has the cost of a subway but service which does not meet that standard, and slow surface operations liable to be delayed by cars down the middle of Eglinton Avenue East. Instead, Sheppard needs to fill the gaps in the current Toronto subway network, gaps that lines like Eglinton have left unfilled. From a short line that doesn't connect to very much, Sheppard should be extended to connect to more rapid transit and subway lines, and more local buses, helping to create a true rapid transit network in North Toronto. The line would also then form an integral component of the subway network, not only serving trips along Sheppard, but helping deliver trains to Yonge Street to scale up transit service there as well. To address the high cost of operation that Line 4 currently saddles the TTC with, the line could be automated, just like the Ontario line, providing better service for less money. And again, all of this could be built more cost effectively. New stations could be constructed to just accommodate the shorter trains that are already used on the line, and parts of the line could be built cut and cover, and perhaps on elevated guideways, as seen on Vancouver's Canada Line. At the same time, the large open spaces at Sheppard West and Scarborough Town Centre could make building those important interchange stations comparatively easy, without the complex underpinning and mining operations needed for the Eglinton or Ontario lines. Ultimately, Toronto's Line 4 isn't a white elephant, but an opportunity to be unlocked. We just need to make it a priority, and we can increase ridership several times over, easily making Line 4 one of the busiest subway lines in the Americas.